Hey, welcome back to Called to the Home. We're here in our series called De-stress Mealtime, and this is episode 3 where we get to talk about one of my favorite things, leftovers. If you haven't seen any of the earlier episodes, we have talked about 2 other aspects of de-stressing mealtime, and we've also laid the groundwork that this is a Christian series. So we are going to refer to scripture or biblical principles in every single episode. Today is no different. So turn to John chapter 6 where we hear Christ actually mentions leftovers. Now, I will caution you, this is a woman-run series for women who are keepers of their home. I am not going to address the deeper spiritual truths here. This is about way more than what it looks like on the surface. I'm intentionally not going there. So if you know that there is more to this and you're like, well, that's not what it means. Yes, I know that too. But even when Christ gives deep spiritual truths, there's always layers that affect all aspects of life. One of the beautiful things about the Bible as the living Word of God is that no matter where you're at spiritually, there is something that is going to help and grow you, something that will encourage and challenge you at your level. So we're just going to address one of those layers here and know that there is much more being said by these verses than what I'm going to talk about today. So we're going to look in John chapter 6, verses 11 through 13. And it says, "And Jesus took the loaves, and when he had given thanks, he distributed to the disciples, and the disciples to them that were set down, and likewise of the fishes as much as they would. When they were filled, he said unto his disciples, Gather up the fragments that remain, that nothing be lost. Therefore they gathered them together, and filled 12 baskets with the fragments from the 5 barley loaves, which remained over and above unto them that had eaten." And that is the end of our short little section from that passage today. Yes, again, very deep spiritual truths here about salvation, the gospel, the kingdom of God, living the Christian life. But we're just going to look at how can I take a principle from this to apply to my home. The first, most obvious, literal thing he's saying here is that it is not good to waste. He did not want the food to be just chucked and gone. It was to be given to bring life, to be fruitful, to help others be nourished and strengthened to do the work. And so as we look in our homes, we can apply that principle to everything, but today we're specifically intentionally looking at food. So it is important as keepers of our home that we take good stewardship of the food that comes through our fingers and that we make sure that nothing is lost. The goal, though we may never 100% reach it, the goal is that no food goes in the trash can in your house. No food goes down the garbage disposal. Now, some may end up in the compost pile. That's not a horrible end. But the goal is if it was brought into the house for the purpose of human consumption, then that's what it should do. And so if you're not there yet, listen as I talk through some ideas that might help you rethink how you prepare and plan meals or how you handle leftovers to help you get closer to that goal. I have several ideas to help you with that today, several areas in which I have grown as a wife and mother in my home. Some of them you may have already heard of before, some may be new. If all of them are new, let me just encourage you, don't try to tackle everything all at once. Pick 1 or 2 and try that for a few weeks. And then when you feel comfortable, come back, watch it again, pick another 1 or 2 until you've mastered them all. And then you might even find other ways, and so you can share with others what you can do as well. One of the first suggestions I can give to you about making sure leftovers actually get eaten is to cook ingredients, not casseroles. Think about that for a minute. When you are meal planning, casserole shouldn't be something I am often making with from-scratch ingredients. Casseroles were actually designed as ways to use up leftovers. Did you know that? So cook ingredients, not casseroles. Why? When I cook casseroles, the only thing I can do with it is reheat it and eat it again as a casserole. Now, some of them are really good. Maybe your family loves them and they will love to eat it again, reheated. A lot of them aren't. So when I instead cook ingredients, I'm cooking chicken, that's available. I'm cooking rice, that's separate and available. There's 1 or 2 vegetables, separate, available, and I keep them separate. We enjoy them because they're fresh and they're cooked well, they're seasoned well. Now, because they're separate, I have many options for how to store them and for how to use them in the future that doesn't have to be a 100% repeat of the meal I just had. Hopefully now you're starting to see some ideas if that's new to you. The second suggestion that I have for you is to consider some things about how you store food. If you're not typically a leftovers storing and eating family, there are some things you have to consider. Number 1, I would be remiss if I didn't say this as a scientist and someone who has learned a lot about food safety. Leftovers are not safe to eat if they have been sitting out at room temperature for over 4 hours. So if you've cooked up chili, you've cooked up a big pot of stew or soup, or you made a casserole, and it has sat out for more than that amount of time, I'm sorry, it's got to go in the trash can. You may choose to live dangerously and to go through and eat things like that, but I won't do that. And I'm never going to advocate for that here. Number 2 in this category, so I have 4 items here, is to keep the ingredients separate. So if you cooked ingredients, don't then dump them all together in a bowl and stick that in the refrigerator unless that is tomorrow night's dinner and you've already got it planned and this is the casserole. You've already thought through the flavors, it melds, everybody's going to like it. If that's not the case, keep it separate because again, you've got greater versatility and more usefulness in future meals. The next thing you have to consider as you're storing your leftovers is if you are putting it in aluminum foil or plastic, do not let it touch those materials until it is cool, completely room temperature. If it is still a little bit warm to the touch, both aluminum and plastic will leach into the food, and we have been finding with health studies lately, both of those are bad. However, we don't need to go overboard. As long as the food is cool, and in the case of aluminum, not acidic, once it is completely cool, it is okay. It is not going to leach very much at all in the 1 to 2 days it's in your refrigerator before you pull it out. Dump it into something glass to then heat it up and eat again. So we do not need to go overboard with that. I do still use plastic containers for some very restricted set of uses. Same thing with aluminum foil. It's not going to kill you to touch it. It's not going to kill you if it touches cooled food, but not a good idea to be using it with heat. And the other thing, my last item in the storage category, is when things go into your storage area, whether that is staying on the counter because it's bread, going to the refrigerator, or going into the freezer, you have got to put labels on it. I learned this from working a little bit in the food industry. You have got to date everything. This eliminates that problem of, how long has that chicken been in the back of the refrigerator? I'm not sure. Is this still okay to eat? Let me smell it. That's really not a good way to go unless you enjoy getting the stomach virus. I don't. Well, I say virus, it's technically bacteria at that point, but you know what I mean. So it is very easy to get a Sharpie. I keep 4 in my kitchen in a little cup holder right next to my refrigerator so that I have access to them. On plastic bags, they're disposable, so you can write directly on there, the date, month and day. So September 17th, October 23rd. Write it directly on there. For all of my glass dishes, glass jars, all of those sorts of containers, I just keep a roll of masking tape. Light brown, tan colored tape, $3 or $4. You get a little 1-inch strip of it, roll of it from Walmart. And I keep that also in my kitchen next to that cup of Sharpie markers. And I just tear off a little piece of it, stick it on the container, write on it. It comes right back off. It doesn't leave any residue. We've been doing that for years. This has been a game changer for us in making sure leftovers get eaten, because before we weren't quite sure. And if it was iffy, we were kind of like, oh, let me eat something else instead. And then it would continue to sit in the refrigerator, even though it had actually been perfectly safe to eat, because nobody was quite sure until now we were quite sure it was no longer good to eat, and it got thrown away. You see how that works? If I know it's good to eat, then I'll go ahead and eat it, and the label helps with that. All right, my third big picture tip for this section is to keep a list on your refrigerator of what is inside your refrigerator. And this will ensure that the things in there actually get eaten. Have you ever had the issue where a child has opened the refrigerator and stood staring for minutes on end, and you had to say, close the fridge, you're going to let all of the food spoil because it's not cold in there anymore? This eliminates the issue. Now, you may still have to do some training with children who cannot read yet, but on my refrigerator, as I referenced in a previous episode, I have a big 18-inch whiteboard magnetically sticks right to the front of the refrigerator. And I just draw a little line right down the center. Left side is my weekly meal plan. The right side lists in order with dates the leftovers that are in the fridge. Now that sounds like it's really complicated and organized. It's not. This is how it looks. Rice, September 16th. Scrambled eggs, September 17th. And you don't even have to write out the whole month. Abbreviate, abbreviate, abbreviate. But this list has done wonders for us in making sure that we actually eat what's in there. We use a lot of leftovers for our lunches. I very rarely actually cook something new at lunchtime for lunch. And so being able to go look at that list for me and then tell everybody, hey, here's what's for lunch today because it's on the list, has been very helpful. Or looking to see, hey, I've got a lot of rice in the refrigerator right now. I can make this thing and it will go well with the rice for lunch. So that has helped me to very quickly pull together meals and make sure the leftovers get eaten. You can also incorporate those leftovers into future meals or your weekly meal plan. We'll talk more about that in just a minute. So just some reasons why having a list on your refrigerator of what's in it is very helpful. The fourth thing I want to mention today is that you have options when it comes to heating up your leftovers. You probably are used to the microwaving everything, but I want you to consider for just 1 second, and maybe in the future if there's interest, I'll go into more detail on this, the science behind the different ways that cookings work and how the resulting food product comes out. So number 1, a microwave actually works, and I'm going to simplify it a lot. The microwave works by vibrating water molecules. If there's no water molecules in the food, it's going to do some weird things to some chemicals in there, but you're not getting good heating because it's really designed to work by vibrating water molecules. What does that mean for me heating up leftovers? Microwave is fantastic for things that have a high water content. I'm reheating a soup, a stew, a tomato sauce, something with a lot of liquid in it. It's going to work really well. For things that don't have a lot of liquid in it, or have the danger of if they lose what little liquid they have, because the microwave absolutely, in vibrating those water molecules, evaporates them right out of there, is going to then not be tasty. Don't choose that option. Or add additional water to the dish, cover it with another glass plate. I do that a lot, so that that extra water is what's microwaved out, not the moisture that you needed to stay in the food. So for example, in a pinch, I will microwave frozen shredded chicken from a previous leftover dinner. However, I never just put the chicken on a plate and microwave it. It will come out horribly dry and chewy. Always goes into a deep glass bowl, add a half cup of water, cover that loosely with a plate, just flipped upside down. You want a little bit of a ventage area, but covered. Microwave it on a low power for a little bit of time. Stir, check on it, feel it until you get it up to the right temperature. Having that additional water in there allows it to come to temperature without removing all of the moisture. It's still not the same as eating it the first day. But if I'm incorporating that into something else, if I'm adding it to a moisture type thing, a sauce or a casserole, nobody's going to notice at that point. All right. Another option that you have for reheating leftovers, we got to explore a lot a few weeks ago when we thought that the microwave had died. Turned out I didn't know that that particular outlet had its own separate breaker and we had just tripped it. Fun learning there we had. Stovetop. You can do anything that you can heat up in the microwave that is liquid on your stovetop. So same thing goes for your soups, your stews, your chilies. Put it in a pot, little bit of water, cover it, and basically steam it. You don't want to fill the pot to the top with water. You're not boiling it. So imagine you're steaming vegetables. If you have one of those handy little steamer trays, one of the metal ones, not a fan of the silicone ones, but one of the metal ones, that's a great option. Put your food in that, a little bit of water underneath it, and steam it. It comes out actually really good. Better than the microwave, but it's going to take you 10 minutes instead of 1. So you do have to consider that. You can always put things in the oven, but because this is going to work by convection, it's going to cause heat. The heat's going to cause the water in the food to rise up, out, and evaporate. It also can tend to dry out your food. So you have some options for combating that. Option number 1 is to cover the container. So there are Dutch ovens, there are even glass casserole dishes that have lids that are oven safe. That is the best option. Always make sure it's covered to keep the moisture in. The steam even will help it to heat evenly. Option number 2, cover it with aluminum foil. As I said earlier, as long as the foil is not touching liquid or acid, it's okay. Make it kind of a tall tent up over your container and you don't really have much to worry about. You may want to consider adding some extra moisture, extra fat, extra liquid to your food when it goes in the oven so that it doesn't come out dry. Consider what it is and add accordingly. So if I have a tomato sauce based thing, I'm going to add a little extra water to it, knowing that a lot of it will bake out as steam. But if I have an Alfredo sauce, I don't want to add water to it. I would add some heavy cream, maybe some half and half, so that I maintain that texture and the flavor, but I also provide the moisture that it needs. Another option you may not have yet, but if you're considering as you look towards Christmas and requesting gifts, an air fryer. This has been a game changer for our children, at least in being happy to eat leftovers. There are many things like pizza, chicken nuggets, chicken fingers, French fries that they would not touch leftover no matter how I cooked it. But once we got the air fryer, totally different. They're now happy to eat them leftover. So that is an incredible option, even if you just get a small one for the purpose of leftovers. Anything that was originally fried is going to taste way better air fried than put then in the microwave. And it works for, of course, 100 different actual cooking applications, but just consider that as a leftover option. The next thing I want to talk about is just some ideas for what are some leftovers that actually taste good that most people will tend to eat. Consider then as you cook those, don't worry about the amount, always cook extra because they'll eat it leftover. Saves you time of having to cook it fresh again later. And then some ideas for what are some good base ingredients that I would want to cook extra on purpose so that I have leftovers. What do I do with these leftovers now that I have them? So first, I polled my kids today and asked them, what are their favorite things when they open the fridge or freezer, when they go and read that list to see on that list that they like to eat? And here's what they told me. So pancakes was on the list, waffles, any kind of rice, and egg quiche. So those were their top 4 that they gave me. There's a couple of things, obviously. Leftover pizza ranks up pretty highly on the list because we do have the air fryer to bring it back to almost as good quality as it originally was. But things like that. Know your own family. Ask them, what is it that they enjoy eating leftover? Pay attention as you look at your fridge and freezer, which we'll talk about in the next episode. What is it that gets eaten quickly? What does not get eaten quickly? And adjust your cooking strategies accordingly. Now for raw ingredients, things that I intentionally overcook, not overcook like burning it, but cook lots of in large quantities so that I can have it as leftovers because I want that. would be any kind of meat if it's a plain and simple meat. So we're talking, boneless, skinless chicken breasts. We're talking ground chuck meat, so, like ground beef, any type of ground chicken, ground turkey. If I am just keeping it really simple, not putting in a really heavy spice, so salt, pepper, oil, brown it, saute it. In the case of poultry, I would cook that in my pressure cooker, and so it's going to retain all of its moisture. Same thing goes with like a pork shoulder. Those come out really good. Shred the meat, crumble the meat, let it completely cool, store it, keep it in the freezer. Cheese. I learned this summer. Very excited about this. You can buy the gigantic, Sam's Club, Costco size blocks of cheese, big 2 and 3 pound blocks. And although you may not go through it fast enough to keep it in your refrigerator, you can shred it, portion it into Ziploc bags, and put it in the freezer, and it thaws out just as beautifully as though it had been fresh. So excited to find that that is the case, because now I get to completely ditch all pre-shredded cheeses, which is something that I had hated having to do, but was a necessary convenience for us in some cases. Now that's gone. So I've been shredding everything. Swiss, cheddar, mozzarella, all works, all beautiful. So definitely keep that on hand. Now, what do I do with all of these leftovers? How do I pull them together for meals? Well, shredded meats, ground beef, ground chicken, ground turkey, those cooked. You've already got your meat cooked, but now add it to your vegetables, add it to your seasoning, put in a sauce, soup, stews, chilies, those sorts of things. You would have had to have cooked that anyways, so you actually just save yourself some preparation steps. So consider that cooking ingredients, keeping those as leftovers, is way easier. Other things, you can mix and match a lot of odd ingredients and vegetables together in pretty much any kind of soup or stew or chili. Consider looking at Pinterest. There's lots of different ideas. For soups, it doesn't all have to be chicken broth based. So it can be a tomato sauce base, it can be a cream sauce base, it can be a cheese sauce base. Lots of options for variety so that the family doesn't get sick of, oh, it's dump everything in chicken broth day again, right? And so consider you have lots of different things you can do. You can also beef it up a little. If you're wanting to do a soup or a stew or a chili and you're low on things but you need to use up 1 or 2 key leftovers, you can always add rice to pretty much any of those, and that'll make it a lot heartier. You can also dice potatoes, throw that into any of those, works really well. And I learned this year as well, you can also throw in radishes. Fresh radishes, throw it right in. If you cook them for about 20-30 minutes, long enough for it to absorb the flavors, it tastes like potatoes. It does not taste like a spicy radish at all. Very excellent. Other things you can do with random bits of leftovers, quesadillas, any kind of tacos, burritos, mix all that up. It works really well. And then last, I'm going to say last because my husband hates casseroles. If he's got any hope of eating something along those lines, I have to call it something else. So it's last on our list because I try to avoid that. It's last resort. But you can make a casserole. That is what they were actually invented for in the first place. So pick ingredients that meld together. Don't mix things that would be weird. Add a sauce. You want to make sure there's good moisture. Cheese almost always makes it better. Think about texture. You want something crispy, crunchy. And so kind of put all that together. That works well. If casseroles aren't your thing either, consider a lasagna or some kind of a cheese sauce pasta bake, a cheeseburger macaroni type of something. Usually you can sneak in some vegetables and meat together, mix that together, and everybody actually doesn't mind eating it. Last, what happens if you've tried all the things, maybe you're just in this learning process, and you do have a couple foods that they didn't make it. You hit 5 days and it's supposed to be done. Nobody really wants to eat it, so there's no point in it sitting in the back of the refrigerator anymore. It just needs to go. Consider, as we'll talk about in some future series, we want to minimize the waste that we are producing. As we read in the scriptures at the beginning, we want to make sure every resource that passes through our fingers is being used to nourish our families and to make them be fruitful and energized to help advance Christ's kingdom and do the work He's created us to do. When we chuck everything in the garbage constantly, we are wasting those resources. It's not a sin, but something to be considerate of. So I would encourage any sort of plant matter, clear liquids, try to put that outside in the yard in a compost pile instead of throwing it into the garbage where it's going to be surrounded by plastic and take a long time to cycle through the way God has created our Earth's ecosystem to work and kind of get back into the food chain. It eventually will. I don't believe man can stop the way that God has organized the world to work. But let's not make it harder for ourselves by creating a nation where the soil is super depleted of minerals and nutrients because we've been encasing them in plastic when we ought to have been doing other things. If it came from a plant, if it's a clear liquid, things like broths, just dump it outside. You can do that with other foods. So I know a lot of people will say, oh, but I do that with everything. You can, but I would encourage you, if you've never done that before, be careful because meats attract wild animals and not the nice ones. So you might accidentally get bears, raccoons, and some scarier ones that carry rabies and disease in your backyard if you do that. So just be mindful of that. I haven't had any bears come into the yard because of salad that got thrown out because it was too wilted and covered in slime for anybody to eat it. But that isn't the case necessarily for some other things. So be mindful of that. We'll talk more about composting in the future. Last, always be watching what your family is and isn't eating. There are some things, even though a lot of other people that you talk to and hear about will eat it, your family doesn't. It doesn't matter what other people are doing. If your family's not going to eat it, it's not working. Try some things, learn some new recipes, soups, stews, chilies, casseroles, things that maybe they'll eat it in. And if that fails, mental note, the next time you make that, bake exactly enough that each person gets one serving of it, and that's it. So make sure that the other items with your dinner is enough that everybody will be full. You don't want to have leftovers of a food that no one in your house likes to eat reheated. For example, in my house, it's macaroni. My husband is the only person in the house that likes leftover macaroni. Nobody else wants to touch it. So I have had to learn I can't just make a huge batch, big giant camp style pot of macaroni. It's fun to make and I enjoy doing it, but if nobody's going to eat the leftovers, it's not so fun when I'm scooping out 7 servings of it into the garbage can. So I have to make it smaller. It worries me a little because it doesn't look like very much, but it's always enough. So mark out exactly how much everybody's going to eat and just stick with that. If there's even more left over next time, just make a little bit smaller of a batch the next time so that decreases. It's okay. You're not going to hit the goal on the first target, but our goal is to simply shrink our food waste so that we are good stewards for the Lord and the resources He has provided to us, good stewards for the heads of our households so that we are taking good care of the money and resources they're providing us, and making sure that we are having a habit of making the best use of every single thing that passes through our fingers. That's all I have for you today on leftovers. See you next time.